Greetings, ladies and germs, and all the worms in between. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching How to Rock Astrology. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Today we're going to be going through more in our series discussing the moon in Sagittarius. This is, of course, my own natal moon sign, so I've been having fun just talking about it and going through it with you guys. I'm a Tropical Vedic astrologer. I typically abide by the same measurements that most Westerners abide by, but I also apply the ancient Vedic philosophy of Jyotish, Indian astrology, to my ideas here. So keep that in mind, and as you kind of watch and check things out, I recommend that you feel out what I explain for yourself and see if you resonate with what I bring up when I talk about this Moon and Venus combination. In particular, we're going to be going through what it's like when you have Sagittarius Moon with Gemini Venus. What we have here is the dreaded opposition angle. Excuse me. And this is pretty much the fullest angle that the moon can have with Venus, aside from actually being conjunct in the same house. I have a little graph here that I always like to display so you can see that ultimately when you're at exactly 180 degrees, that's when this combination is at its fullest. Now 150 degrees, the sixth house aspect, is 0 points of aspect. So, this could mean that if the moon is at, let's say, 0 degrees of Sagittarius, would that be right? I'm thinking more like if the moon is at like 29 degrees of Sagittarius and Venus is at like 1 degree of Gemini, I think that I've got that correct, then essentially it might have much less of this opposition aspect. So keep in mind that plus, there's many reasons why you can have a good Venus and a good moon. I talk about how the moon can be closer to full, it could be waxing, it could have aspects from its friends. Venus can have aspects from its friends, Mercury or Saturn. All of these things can help these planets to be at their best. But with regards to this particular aspect, you might not have the full opposition aspect, but most of you who have the moon in Sagittarius and Venus in Gemini probably will. So even if you see that there isn't by Vedic reckoning, that this aspect is not there, you should still keep in mind that this energy is still possible and available, and that you should just, listen to the interplay between these two planets by sign anyway, because it will still be useful to you. So we are looking at Sagittarius Moon with Gemini Venus, and we see that there is an opposition aspect. Vedic astrology puts a big emphasis on the relationship between two planets. In particular, all planets have all planets have friends and enemies, except for the moon. The moon doesn't have enemies, but it has friends, and Venus has the moon for an enemy, which is a very interesting thing. It's kind of why I've been doing this series, is to kind of unfurl what that's all about. Essentially, the real root of it is that the moon represents needs that are intrinsic to us, that we've always abided by in childhood. It is an aspect of ourselves that we enjoy so much because it's the deepest procreative survival instinct that we attach to in order to have the vitality and faith to go and adapt to the world and do the things that we need to do. So whatever your moon does, whatever you do as a Sagittarius moon to keep you chipper and excited and give you the vitality to face your ambitions and to do all the big energy expansive things that Sagittarius moon likes to do, you probably enjoy those things so much that if they happen to clip and get in the way of your relationships, you will probably lean on not hearing the partner if you think that what they're trying to tell you is going to get in the way of your will. and going to obstruct your big plans for whatever you want to do. In particular, because these two are on oppositions in mutable signs, it'll probably involve you really just having the freedom to collect the type of data that you want to collect. By having Venus in Gemini, you're somebody who likes to enjoy being a person who brings new information to the table, who researches and collects information in a way, and you enjoy collecting information. You enjoy collecting more data about any point. And you can probably argue anyone out of anything that they would try to get through you with. You know, they could tell you, you know, if you feel like you kind of drink too much or you eat too much food, and you can argue them and say, like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm somebody with a certain type of metabolism. And even though I'm getting big and I'm showing that I'm sluggish, you know, you can argue your way out of anyone giving you advice, because there's more data than just the data that you're giving me right now, right? At some point, you have to recognize when your attachment to being the person who brings the right data stops you from being what this combination really deeply desires, which is getting all the data necessary to be a well-informed, intelligent, and clever person. You can probably find yourself being locked in a sphere of mental conditioning and tendencies that keeps you stuck and biased on a preferred way to gain information. And when someone comes along and tells you a different way of thinking, you can always just shrug it off and say, that's not fitting the framework of conception that I'm trying to work within, which I know works best for me. And this kind of thing, it's based essentially on a narcissism, because you've got a plan. The Sagittarius moon has a big plan. It's in a masculine-ruled planet sign. That's Jupiter. But really, Jupiter is actually, the moon in Pisces is okay because it's closer to Taurus and it's receptive. It can listen because it wants to listen. It naturally listens. Sagittarius is the sign of a masculine planet, Jupiter, and it is the masculine sign of this masculine planet. Plus, it's closer to Scorpio, which is the masculine dimension, the malefic dimension of the moon. So it's inclined to have plans and big, ambitious energies that it wants to be able to do itself, and it doesn't want to need others' advice. It doesn't want to need others' support, emotional support. It wants to have a cookie-cutter plan for its unfoldment of something useful to the world that will get it the biggest and best expansion that it can. And when someone comes along and has a different idea about the world or about what you're investing yourself into, you might be inclined to say, this is ruining something that I'm halfway through. You know, like, let's say you want to go on YouTube and you want to do a bunch of astrology videos, and someone comes along and says, you know, there's another system which says that this planet does well in this sign. You know, like, I mean, something that I often talk about is that the planets, when they're exalted, they're good, but it doesn't mean that they're acting at their best per se. It just means that they have lots of energy and they can still go awry. But many people will come along and say that a planet, Venus exalted in Pisces, is guaranteed to be a good thing. If I came along and told them that you have to consider that doesn't necessarily, you know, because you could have lots of energy but going in the wrong direction in a bad way when Venus is exalted in Pisces. If I told a Sagittarius moon with Gemini Venus that, and they were already halfway through talking about all the exalted planets, they would say, yeah, I'll think about that after I do this video. And really, after they do the video, they'll try to defend what they did in that video, which means they probably won't end up absorbing that information. That's just me using an example to kind of sketch out the kind of ignoring that the moon being opposite Venus in Gemini, the moon in Sagittarius being opposite Venus in Gemini, can really do. Now, something that has to be said here, I really highly recommend you check out my Moon in Sagittarius video. I released it recently, and it really conveys the narcissistic Sagittarius Moon at its worst. I'm a Leo rising. When you come to my videos, what you're going to see is the heaviest, worst capabilities of these planets and their signs, so that you can be well informed and make sure you don't fall into the pitfalls. Because ultimately, every planet and every sign has the ability to work out its best, because we, inside of ourselves, are actually pure transcendental awareness and divine intelligence, which is glimmering its divine light through a genetic ancestral memory of ancestral fears, of ancestral karma and past action. So we have a nature, we have to cater to that nature. But if we're objective about that nature, we can convey it in a way that's ultimately yogic, dharmic, and right and true. So with all that being said, being Sagittarius Moon can ultimately have this sort of, again, this, at its worst nature, it can be a narcissistic placement. I have Sagittarius Moon too. You know, I often tell my girlfriend, honey, I can't hang out with you tonight because I'm going to go home, I'm going to get all my stuff ready, and I'm going to do half an hour, 4 hours of YouTube videos in the comfort of my room here by myself. I'm going to study my shit, and I'm going to put all my energy into this thing. And then I'm going to come home at, me and my girlfriend live separate. I'm going to go to her place at the end of tonight, and I'm only going to have like an hour to hang out with her. We're going to go to sleep, and we're going to wake up, and we're going to go to work. And there's only so many times where I can actually hang out with my girlfriend, because my Sagittarius Moon so loves to expand myself through this YouTube world. This is what it is. And I'm an astrologer. I know this nature in myself, and I still do it. The trick is to communicate and make sure that there is still some water that you're offering your lover, so that you can communicate, build a future together, in the sense that all these things that I do, what's good for Dustin is what's good for both of us. And I have to still, even though I'm so moving towards the future, if I don't give a little bit of that water to my partner at some point and really build that trust and communication, and communicate that I'm this way, but ultimately still give the gesture of water to her, then she's probably not going to continue wanting to be with me, because all people are typically way more desirous of a sentimentally rich human life than us Sagittarius Moons are. We enjoy sentimental, emotionally rich experiences in order to regenerate us to go back and do our independent solo ambition thing. And this is the nature of Sag Moon. It has to be balanced. Now, this is something I have to explain. In my Sag Moon video, I talk about how Sagittarius Moon is, for many reasons, it's got a lot of fire energy, and it's a water planet. The moon is one of the upholders of the Svadhisthana chakra, the second chakra. The water chakra, the second chakra, Svadhisthana, is beheld and ruled by, at least in this cosmic Vedic cosmology, there's many ways of conveying the chakras, but in one of them, given by Ernst Wilhelm, where he talks about the Panchatattvas, the water tattva is lorded by the moon and by Venus. And if you're weak on your moon, and if your moon lacks its own intrinsic capacity to be desirous of essentially connecting with the energy grid of love and support from those around you, because many hands make light work, two heads are better than one, and we ought to work smarter, not harder, in our lives by being with people who support us and mutually supporting them, so that our journey to doing what our sun wants to do can be sustained by the water. You're walking up a mountain, you got to drink water, have rest, in order that you can go up the mountain at your best. You know, the people who climb at Mount Everest, it takes 2 weeks or something like that, or a month or whatever it is. If you're going to do it, the ones who really make it know how to rest just as much as they know how to endure walking. This is what Sagittarius Moon needs to learn. And so the water Svadhisthana chakra, sustains us. Not only that, but it douses our ambition. You as a Sagittarius moon have one of your water chakra planets being funneled through the Manipura chakra. Technically here it's the ether chakra, but Jupiter is a masculine planet. It's part of the sun. It's what we're doing. The sun is what we are from 9 to 5. It's what we do. The moon, the lunar dimension of us, the feminine dimension, is what we are, what we have and who we merge with and develop and regenerate resources and energy through in order to do what the sun wants to do. Jupiter is on the doing end of things. So the moon in Sagittarius is sacrificing its grounding and anchoring through the energy shared with other people, kind of like gets as much of that as it can and says, see you later, hope to see you next time, and then funnels it into an ambition like my YouTube channel that I do for myself, you know? So this is the problem with Sagittarius moon at its essence. Although it's part of who you are, you got to accept that, you know, I like doing what I'm doing here at some level. At many levels, it's part of who we are. But you've got to be able to do it and sacrifice somewhere along the lines to stop, drink the water, and to share sentimental experiences with your partner, especially if you want them to stay with you. Now, since the Sagittarius moon is so sacrificed to ambition and wants to just go and do things and then bring home the bacon to their partner, they still have to communicate with their partner. Venus, for all Sagittarius moons, as well as Scorpio moon and Libra moon, because they're all so close to Scorpio, that's what brings out that independence, because debilitation works by proximity. Essentially, for Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius moon, they don't want support from others. But in what's the reverse of that is that they have to get their emotional energy themselves, and this is what's damning. But since the Sagittarius moon lacks water, we need to depend on Venus to give us a reason to have enjoyment with others that is an actual enjoyment. If Venus is ill aspected or if it's troubled in any way, then ultimately it's always going to feel like an annoying maintenance of a vehicle. Venus is our vehicles. Venus resonates with the number 6, which relates to Virgo, interestingly. So when we don't have the water chakra present naturally, it's always going to seem like maintenance, like we have to do this annoying thing in order to get our vehicle to convey us to where we want to go in our lives. It's this annoying thing we have to do. And ultimately, if you realize that the emotions are a part of the inherent metaphysical psychochemistry of all humans, you will recognize the importance of that, you'll get out of your own way, and you will share with your partners in this way. It's smart to do so. So ultimately, we need Venus to give us reasons to sentimentally enjoy connecting with our partners. Or else it'll always feel like maintenance. You have a lucky position here because Venus in Gemini, well, it's lucky and it's not lucky. The opposition aspect here is the heaviest moon starvation aspect that can happen. So this moon is deeply starving this Venus, like the most deeply that it could. The good news is that Venus is in the sign of a friend. That's Gemini. So this Venus is aided, at least by sign, in having the water of self-reflection and of mutual reflection with others so that you can get out of your own head and actually get the information that you want to feel good, to feel like you have an erotic confidence when you go out and do your job and your networking and all the things, the big time energies of Mr. Big, expansive energy, Sagittarius moon that you want to be in your career. You know, that's part of what attracts for a Sagittarius moon. What attracts the expansion is Venus giving you a sentimental experience that you are loved by somebody, that you aren't actually just like a politician with a wry smile. You actually have a life that's sentimentally rich at home. And it's those people, those politicians, who can hold it down the best because they're not faking it and they actually have ways to regenerate themselves. With this moon in Sagittarius opposite Venus in Gemini, Gemini, thankfully, is in Venus in Gemini is in the sign of a friend. It's the sign of Mercury. This means that you are delighted by Mercury. So, because Mercury is a natural friend to Venus. Notice that Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, air, earth signs. Venus rules Libra and Taurus, air, earth. So Mercury is an inherent friend of Venus. It helps it to be objective, helps it to get out of its own understanding and to share in mutual cohesion with others so it doesn't get stuck in its own way of thinking. This is aided by, Venus is aided by being delighted by Mercury, and this gives this combination where the Sag moon is lacking water. This Venus can communicate. It learns to communicate. It learns to reflectively talk about with others, and it enjoys that. And others enjoy that you aren't so in a vacuum of narcissism like some Sagittarius moons are. But because of this opposition aspect, there is a problem here. You know, it's good that there's an inherently reciprocal nature to Mercury, to Mercury's communication. But the trouble is that the communication which Venus in Gemini wants to be appreciated for is often still, it's like scattered hot air. It's much ado about nothing, and it's often also a vacuum of self-interest, one which you just simply share with your partner, where you are dominating the conversation. You are dominating and even kind of, you know, evading what the partner might be saying. Because again, because of the moon in Sagittarius, no matter how objective and willing to communicate and converse your Venus and Mercury is, you can even convince yourself that I listened, I heard it, we talked about it. I just felt like what they told me wasn't as important as what I was already thinking. So we aired it out, we talked about it, and then I just went along with what I was going to do anyway. Because Sagittarius moon doesn't want to be obstructed on the way to its journey up the mountain of its own, sometimes narcissistic self-interest. So, you know, this full, it's because, especially because of the full aspect opposition, Venus and the moon being opposite each other. It causes Venus's ability to share its life with its partner and loved ones to be strained. The compulsion to evade, to always seek another way of thinking about it, to get out of a second opinion, it averts attention from those trying to get through to you. You know, there's always somewhere to escape to in argument and conversation for you. And it seems you'll always find something that's plausible enough to get to table it. You know, it's like, okay, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. We can't really resolve them. So let's just table this for later. Where really the partner gave you wonderful pieces of insight and advice that you should take into consideration, and you probably will. The Venus being delighted by Mercury probably means that you'll go away and you'll actually think, fuck, you know, what if they are actually right? And you'll go away and you'll think about it, and you'll probably come back to them. And if you have good Venusian qualities or lunar qualities outside of this opposition thing that's happening, because again, like I said, there's more to both of these planets than just their sign positions. So if you have some kind of compassionate bone, you will come to the partner afterwards and say, you know, you said something to me there that was important for me to hear, and that'll be the water. That'll glue you in there. This is why Venus being delighted by Mercury has some water. It has the ability to actually connect with a person and to break through your compulsion, right? But ultimately, you kind of got to work for it, and you got to sacrifice, and you got to be bonded enough from with the partner, respect them enough Value yourself enough to get with a partner who you respect enough to give you information that will actually get you out of the obstructions that your limited mind and perception can cause you with this combination. You know, Venus being opposite here actually even gives a little bit of goodness to the moon, because Venus is a benefic. It is a positive planet. It's, you know, you can be enjoyed by others for your nature and for your conversational style, and you can give information to others, which makes you feel good. Although it's at your own whim, and it's ultimately, it can be, again, falsely altruistic, right? This person can ultimately be too attached to ideas and varieties and novelties of ideas to actually put your ideas to good use. Without others to bounce off of, you don't actually learn about your own ideas. You have no laboratory of dialogue to fully experience it. You know, what often happens with this combination is it's kind of like, I don't know if you experience this, but sometimes when I read a book, especially when I'm like stoned and or kind of tired, I'll read a paragraph and I'll read the whole thing and like I'll be going over the words, but in my head, I'm kind of going to another place. I'll get to the bottom of the paragraph and say, I actually didn't absorb any of that. When you go through it again, you'll richly, deeply absorb it. That's kind of how I read. It's very Sag Moon in a way. But with this Venus in Gemini, it's particularly sticks to this metaphor. You'll not exactly hear what the person is saying because you're too busy thinking about your argument or what you want to say. And the thing is that partners won't give you a chance to relive a moment or a point or an opportunity like a book will. Why should they? They aren't going to baby you. It's no good being this is how the problem is that Venus in Gemini wants to be appreciated for actually sharing equally in conversation. And if your partner has to keep reiterating their points again because you weren't really listening, then no one is enjoying you in conversation. It's just you being ready to say points against their counterpoints. And ultimately, it is not conducive to them enjoying your Venus. And your Venus is supposed to be the one gateway that you have value outside of you know, the ambitious things that you do that don't actually bond you to people. You can get married to someone if you've got a strong 7th lord with this combination. You might, and a strong 9th lord in a 9th house. You'll get married to a person for reasons outside of personal actual bonding and enjoyment, but they'll be a puppet. They'll be a dummy. They'll be a mannequin in your life if you allow yourself to be stuck in this narcissistic vacuum. And as I always say for all Sagittarius moons, if you find that this is the case, you might not. But if you do have an inkling that this is the case, your best bet is to learn to meditate and get an awareness of the nature of the compulsiveness of your mind. Once you begin to practice and discipline yourself to get out of the gear work of your mind, you can begin to actually listen. In this case, it's important for you to be able to listen because your Venus in Gemini wants to be appreciated for listening and talking in a playful and ultimately even way. Mercury is neuter. It's never too much of one thing or another thing when it's at its best. When it's starved by the moon, it leans towards the bias of the needs and desires of the self. So this is why having Venus in Gemini, it's very important for you to listen. And I recommend, something that I recommend you do. As a Sagittarius moon, you'll enjoy going out to nature. Go out and listen to the birds. Listen to a river. I highly recommend this especially. Go out and find a river. Sit down beside a river that has like a nice white noise and listen to the river. And see how long you can sit and listen to the river without an internal plan to do some big ambition happening. Bring a notebook, and if you got to get those fireworks there, you'll probably get great ideas. I recommend it artistically, but for the purpose. You won't get anything out of this if you don't put the notebook down, let those genius ideas move through your brain, and let go of them, let go of your attachment to them, and listen to the river. Listen to the sound of the birds, even for 10 or 15 minutes. Learn to enjoy this listening, because there's a capacity for you to enjoy listening, because Venus in Gemini does want to be appreciated for its ability to actually listen and give legitimate feedback. You have the ability to enjoy listening. Even Mercury, Gemini can be sensual. Being out in nature for the Sag moon, do this, and if you can do it for 10-15 minutes with the river, you can do it for 10-15 minutes with your partner. That's what my recommendation is. Now, ultimately, we could talk about it forever. What I'd like to do now is come into Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega, talk a little bit about the nature of the lovemaking. You know, this is a Western author who just kind of writes these fun things in order to discuss the lovemaking nature of Moon in Sagittarius with Venus in Gemini. So this is Moon in Sag, Venus in Gemini. In relationships, you're passionate, generous, full of fun, and eager for love. Friendship and companionship mean as much to you as love and sex. However, excessive displays of emotion can tend to scare you off. I think that this author is saying that because of, it's not emotions that are necessarily bad, especially Venus here being delighted by Mercury. It has experienced emotions before because you're open to talking about the world, and you'll find out that emotions are something that can give you a good experience, and you'll remember that. You'll understand that. It's really more when somebody emotionally tries to push you to do something, or you'll argue it out. But if their emotions doesn't allow you to argue, that's when your one way of getting through to people is entangled, and you'll say, yeah, this does not work for me. And I get where that's coming from, but it's not emotion for its own sake that you are afraid of. You love trying new things, and to your way of thinking, a permanent romantic alliance can put severe limitations on your ability to experience the richness and variety of life. All these Western writers talk about Moon and Sagittarius being too restless to have a bonded relationship. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's so, especially if your moon is grounded by its friends, especially if there's an aspect from the sun or from Mercury, or if it's got good Shadbala, or if it is closer to full, or if it's waxing. There's many things that can give you an ability to understand the importance in love and soul bonding that can come from a true committed bond. You'll be restless around it, and you'll always hack at the perimeters of the relationship, but if you are situated in a way, then you can appreciate it. Remember, this is just the Moon and Venus by sign. There's so much more going on. That's why I have to give these caveats whenever these Western writers put out fatalistic things like this. But I get the mutability of these two combinations. I get where they're at. There's a desire for variety and novelty. Since outdoor romantic encounters appeal to you, spontaneous lovemaking in an open spaces gets your erotic juices flowing. Probably somebody who could be that kind of person who goes and enjoys the kinkiness of almost getting caught, of having fun, just sort of be, you're probably a public display of affection person. Like me and my girlfriend are. The kind of person that's, oh, baby, it's so sweet, squeeze, 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 squeeze. And you go into places and people can see the hand. It's like, oh, that's so affectionate. Wow, they're really going somewhere with that. So anyway, this is ultimately can be a nice, juicy, and fun, adventurous, erotic combination of a person. So learn your own nature, learn your energy, figure out what is best for the energy that you are, and use that Jupiterian, Sagittarian energy to see over top of what could be some narcissistic tendencies. And even if you gotta feel like you're putting gas in a vehicle and it's this annoying thing that I gotta take care of, if you take care of your vehicle, it'll take care of you. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys on the flip side whenever I'm doing anything else. Thanks for watching.